Hello. Today I will talk about Oslo, the world's first capital city to reach 100% electrification across all public transport. In 2023, all buses, ferries, metros, trams, and trains of Oslo will be 100% electric. In this webinar, I will present how Oslo used business model, public tenders, and contract strategies to reach its goal of a fully zero-emission public transport system. My name is Kåre Iseng, and I'm a senior transport planner at WSP in Norway. I worked with public transport for approximately 26 years, both with operators and on the authority side. I completed many projects in public transport, and in recent years, I worked mostly as an expert in procurement and business model for public transport. And I'm a real public transport nerd, started to analyzing timetables when I was 8 years old. WSP in Norway has 550 employees distributed in offices from Alta in the north to Kristiansand in the south. WSP has been involved in several projects in Oslo that deal with the electrification of transport. The project managed for development of the largest charging depot in Scandinavia, strategy for charging infrastructure for private cars in Oslo, and supporting the Oslo City Council with strategy for traffic reductions. In this webinar, we will touch into the following topics: background about the city of Oslo, client objectives and challenges, 4 measures to achieve zero-emission public transport in 2028, but will be achieved as early as 2023, electrification of buses and ferries, business models and tenders, key takeaways, and Q&A. And since it's not certain that everyone has been to Oslo, here are some pictures from Oslo, one of the electric passenger ferries, a bit of the city, a national day. And one fun fact is that in the wintertime, it's quite common to meet people on the metro who bring cross-country skis. Ruter is the public transport authorities of or agency of the Oslo region. Ruter is engaged in marketing, planning, and not at least purchasing public transport operation from private operators. As a consultant on behalf of WSP, I have been engaged in the tender process for the new contract for bus service in Oslo Inner City and Oslo East, which involves totally 320 new electric buses in service in the Oslo urban area, and means that the goal of emission-free public transport will be achieved as early as 2023. I have mainly worked with strategic-wise preparation of tender documents, negotiations with private operators, and evaluation of bids. Some figures from the greater Oslo region: 45% travel by private car, while 24% use public transport. Almost half of the public transport travels are by bus, 29% by metro, 12% by tram, and 10% by local train. Within the city of Oslo, the distribution of the modes of transport are walking, 32%, public transport, 31%, and cars, 29%. Bicycles have 6%. And when the inhabitants of Oslo buy a new car, 90% choose electric cars, which means that 35% of all private cars in Oslo are electric. And here is how the public transport in Oslo contributes to the UN's sustainability goals. The vision for the public transport in Oslo is sustainability, freedom of movement. And the SDG goal number 11 is therefore placed at the center: contribute to the sustainable cities and communities. Norway is well placed to use electric energy for many purposes. Norway is already a nation that uses electricity as an energy source to a greater extent than it perhaps is common in most other countries. The reason for this is that Norway has an abundant supply of hydropower, which is a renewable source. The city of Oslo aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 36% by 2020 and 95% by 2030. Fossil-free public transport from 2020 means use of electricity with renewable certificates, hydrogen from renewable sources or biofuels. Zero-emission public transport from 2028 means circularity in the supply chain, electricity with renewable certificates, hydrogen with renewable sources, and the plan is to gradually expand the scope of emissions from today's tailpipe emissions to increased focus on indirect emissions. This timeline shows the start from where the requirement for fossil-free operation was implemented. The first test with 6 electric buses in 2017, then 17 electric buses was implemented in existing contracts in 2019, and finally in 2022-2023, where the major contracts for bus operations of the city of Oslo are renewed with electric buses. When testing and implementing electric buses in Oslo, it was tried different types of charging solutions, both pump up, pump down, charging at the end stops in the network, and charging at the depot. And this figure shows the number of electric buses that have been implemented in Oslo per year. And in 2023, all city buses in Oslo will be electric. And here is an overview of today's 3 major contracts for bus services in Oslo city. All have been renewed with the start of operations in 2022 or 2023. And I will present 4 measures that have, in my opinion, contributed to Oslo reaching its goal of zero-emission public transport in 2023. Measure 1 is testing and pilots. Instead of waiting until existing contracts expired, Oslo chose to implement electric buses in existing bus contracts. They did not take the advantage of the opportunity to allocate pilots or separate test lines. Instead, Oslo chose to implement electric buses on existing lines in ongoing contracts with operators. Emphasis was also placed on testing different solutions for electric operation on different lines. The knowledge from the test was made available to all interested operators and subcontractors. Measure number 2 is renew the contracts. When existing contracts could be renewed, they were replaced by new contracts. 3 large contracts were ready to be renewed. For the new contracts, it was either set minimum requirements for zero-emission operations, or it was used award criteria to motivate operators to offer zero-emission solutions. Oslo has chosen to be technology neutral, even though in practice it turns out that electric operation is most appropriate at this time. Measure 3 is cooperation between Ruter operators and subcontractors. Ruter used all potential opportunities for dialogue with operators and their potential subcontractors, both in connection with the preparation and implementation of the tenders. Right at the start, Ruter took the role as a facilitator for bus operators and subcontractors to find each other to assess possible collaborations. This was because it was now necessary for bus operators to organize their bus operations in a new way. The value change for bus operations became more complicated. Instead of a simple fossil fuel supply for their operations, bus operators had to find new suppliers. And measure 4 is using functional demands instead of technical specification. The only thing that Oslo knew in the beginning of this was that electric buses were the future, and that within a short time, all buses in operation in Oslo would be emission-free, mainly electric buses. But Oslo just didn't know how this could be done. And in Oslo, it was chosen to let the operators, together with Ruter, find the best solution, instead of specifying in detail which solution to offer. Ruter uses as much functional requirement as possible. Ruter describes the need or problem that needs to be solved, rather than specifying the specific solution that the supplier should offer. It is then up to the suppliers to compete to find the best solution that they will offer. This provides great opportunities for innovation and means that knowledge of both Ruter and the operators is utilized to the best of the result. Then I will present a little bit more about the zero-emission solutions chosen for Oslo. Since both the local trains, metro and tram in Oslo, are already emission-free, bus and boat remain. So for you to understand some of the background, I will also tell you a little bit about the electrification of boat traffic, although WSP has not been involved in this. 2 of the boat lines were converted into electric operation, and then there was a tender for the remaining lines, entailed 5 new electric boats. The map on the right shows the boat traffic in the Oslo fjord, which is very important for the population in the areas that the boats serve, and as a connection to the islands, especially during the summertime. Transition to zero-emission public transport means that the value chain is changing. This raises a number of questions. There is a need for different expertise and suppliers than what was traditionally have been common in the industry. Who should be the future suppliers of bus and boat service? Will it be today's operators, electricity suppliers, providers of charging infrastructure, etc.? Who will own the buses, charging infrastructure, etc.? And the distribution of responsibility in the contracts today are as follows. The operator is responsible for operations, drivers, the bus or the boat itself, and charging infrastructure. Ruter are responsible for planning networks and providing bus facilities that the operators are required to rent. The charging infrastructure that is established by the operator will be taken over by Ruter upon the end of the contract. This overview shows Ruter's procuring process, starting with preparation of a tender documents. Then the tender is published all over Europe, and probably the most interesting phase is evaluation of bids and negotiation. And when the process is completed, Ruter awards the contract and preparations for startup begin. Along the way, infrastructure is established and buses are delivered. The latter has been somewhat challenging in the recent years, so that the progress plan has been increased to take into account longer delivery time than one is used to. A little bit about Ruter's tender concept. When evaluating tenders, the operator receives points based on what they're offering in their bid. The offer shall be answered according to several sub-criteria, and points will be awarded for each sub-criteria. The scores are given on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. Common sub-criteria are price and cost, quality of service, environmental solutions, quality of network operations, quality of buses, rolling stock. The best operator can get 10 points within each sub-criteria, and then each sub-criteria is weighted with a factor. The award criteria serve as an important instrument to increase quality and also motivate operators to offer higher quality and innovative solutions. In combination with functional requirements and correct minimum requirements, this has a very positive effect on the results achieved through Ruter's tenders, and ultimately the delivery of that operator will be committed to. And here is an overview of the individual award criteria used in Ruter's tenders since the process of establishing zero-emission solutions began. Note that price only counts 35 to 30% of the total points. Quality of operations normally counts 10 to 15%, quality of buses 10 to 15%, planning 10 to 20%, and bus depot operations 5 to 10%, and finally environment 10 to 30%. The process has not been without challenges. Rapid technology development and changes has led to uncertainty. This has made it challenging with investment, choice of non-standard solutions, and attendants had to be at the forefront of developing in bus types. First, there were only Class 1 city buses available, then articulated buses came, and now regional Class 2 buses are available. Some may be interested in knowing more about what I, on behalf of WSP, have contributed more concretely. And here I will try to explain what the job has entailed, participating in the tender group together with Ruter's own employees and other hired consultants for Oslo Inner City tender and partly Oslo East tender. Evaluating the bids from the operators and operational quality for Oslo Inner City tender, and participating in the negotiation committee where the operators met Ruter for the Oslo Inner City tender. Preparing a template for the new way of requirements were formulated in the tender documents for the Oslo East tender and other upcoming tenders in Ruter. Simplifying incentive and bonus scheme, design scheme for transfer charging infrastructure from current operator to new operator, and other tasks for the tendering group. And then I will mention the key takeaways. Competition between operators and suppliers to offer the best solution. For the bus tenders in Oslo, the operators have the opportunity to find solutions themselves, and together with competition, this has a great effect. The second one is cooperation between Ruter operators and suppliers. Dialogue and cooperation have been increased level of knowledge among everyone involved. And the third is specifying tenders based on functional demands instead of detailed specific demands. Asking the suppliers for the solution on Ruter's needs. Because of this model, there are many talented people at Ruter operators and subcontractors who together have the opportunity to contribute to developing the best solution for the customers and inhabitants of Oslo. So this was my presentation. Please feel free to ask questions or contact me later if there's anything I can assist with.
Thank you, Kåre, for a fantastic presentation. Before moving to the Q&A period, I will mention again the housekeeping items briefly. The presentation slides are available to download in the handout box as a PDF, and also please continue to log your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. I will start with the first question. There's a question here about long-term material waste. Has long-term material waste was considered in contracting? Were there recycling, reuse requirements, or innovation incentives?
Yeah, I think there's more focus on that, and I think the focus will increase also. For instance, operators have to make a plan for reusing batteries that are not usable anymore. If someone wants more information on that, they feel free to contact me on this, because there are a lot of details in that question also that could be answered.
Of course. The next question is regarding the Oslo Car-Free Livability Program. If you can also elaborate on that. The question is, has Oslo's Car-Free Livability Program helped or hindered the zero-emission program for 2028?
Yeah, Oslo aims to avoid traffic in some streets in downtown, and that hasn't had any effect on this this project.
Thank you. How long are the contract, and is it linked to the expected battery replacement date?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the lifetime for batteries, and also could a battery be used for other purposes afterwards, but the contracts are normally 12 to 14 years. I think the length of the contracts has expired compared to diesel buses, because I think because the investment on electric buses are higher than diesel buses, and also they might have longer lifetime.
Thank you. How will the client manage the supply of batteries for all vehicles and vessels? Are they leased? What percentage of the batteries are recycled?
This is the way of the business model is that the operators own and buy the buses. The normal model in Norway is that the operators lease the buses. So you could say that the batteries are leased. I'm not sure that there are some demands for reuse batteries or something. I'm not sure about that. But Ruter as a client, now also as the one that puts out the tender, hasn't go into the model of ownership of batteries, but it's a question that have been discussed, who should own the different assets in a public transport operation. But today they are they belong together with the bus.
Thank you. How do you support the client in cost optimization, for example, CapEx or OpEx?
I'm not familiar with this. Well, the one the way of cost optimizing here is a good competition and a good tender, and there are some measurements of the cost of it, but I don't think this is used. I'm not familiar with it, so I might come back to it if or contact me on this.
Yes, we can follow up later on this question.
Yeah.
What do you believe to be the key barriers or drivers influencing progress in electrification of transport?
Well, it was very easy with diesel buses because you can always go to a gas station. It's not that easy with buses. You have to build an infrastructure that is suitable, and that costs money, and you are and make some limitation. But then when that is built and ready, then you're ready to go. I think that's one thing in. And also for Norway case, there are a drive about electricity. So I think electricity always will be thought of as a positive thing in Norway, and that's because we have this hydropower, renewable energy.
Thank you. The next question is about the cold winter in Norway. Given the cold winter temperatures, did extra charging infrastructure have to be provided for reduction of winter range?
Yeah, this is a little bit out of my technical expertise, but I think it's common that batteries could be impacted by cold, and I think that has been a natural part of the planning, taking accordance to this. And also the case is that there are a lot of buses in traffic in the peak hours, and then there are off-peak hours that are very suitable for charging. So I think it's solved that way, but also we can follow up on this question.
Thank you. There's a question here if you can clarify why does the client own the buses themselves and operate public transport themselves?
Yeah, that's the main model in the Nordic countries is public tendering, and Ruter has a very good experience doing it on this way. Of course, there are discussions about electric buses and the contract length, and also that you could think that a PTA would take more ownership to the buses, but as far as now, the best solution is that the operators have the buses and do the operations.
Thank you. The next question is about collaboration. How do the supplier, client, and operator collaborate with each other during the implementation phase to make the project successful?
Yeah, this is regulated by the tendering laws in the EU also, but in the start, the first meeting was like a speed date where operators, subcontractors were invited to Ruter to just discuss electrification, and then they had the opportunity to talk to each other and find the collaboration. So there are Ruter has a lot of what we call that they call dialogue conferences, and also there are in some phases there have been one-to-one meetings and also written replies. So, for instance, Ruter publish a draft for the tender documents before, and then could get feedback on the tender documents before they are published.
Thank you. We're almost about time. Last question, and there are many more questions that will be followed up directly by the presenters. So apologies if we didn't cover your questions so far. How have the customers received the electric buses? Is there any feedback on that?
I think that has gone very well. Of course, there are sometimes some problems implementing new buses. That also happened with diesel buses, and the customers always liked that the bus has come. The electric buses, I think, is very popular by the customers.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to follow up with the presenter, via the contact details shown on the screen. And thank you, Kåre, for a fantastic presentation. So we will wrap up the session now. Thank you, everyone.